Before we dive into the podcast, let's get you some free XRP. This channel is now working with Bybit. It's an exchange that you see online where we can buy our very much treasured XRP. And for this audience, they've created a deposit bonus for all of you. And when you sign up and you deposit $100, you get an extra $10 of USDT. And then you can trade that money and the extra USDT that you've got now with any cryptocurrency that you're looking for. And I know that many of you will be choosing one of those X assets. So use the link in the description, register, deposit, get that bonus, get some XRP. That's what I would do anyway. Back to the episode. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the No Emotion podcast. Today, after a massive demand and everyone requesting me in comments and all over social media, we've finally got Zach Rector on. And hopefully today, we're going to get some insights into his brain and how he explains things to his audience, which also might kind of help everyone else here as well. And I think something that we do on our channels, Zach, is we do our research and then we try our best to output that information in the most accessible way possible. And I think you do a tremendous job at doing that. One of the great communicators of this space. So I appreciate everything that you're doing and thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you, Lewis. I appreciate it. Really looking forward to collaborating with you. And I really respect your work. Your channel's been growing very rapidly. And the conversation that you guys are having over there is dialed in over the target. And like you said, hopefully we can not just talk about the conspiracy, for lack of a better word, for what's going on here, trying to figure out this grand conspiracy, right? But we like to present it and put together a plan and a program so that people can actually apply this to their lives instead of being able to just talk about this casually with their buddies. Let's actually implement this into our businesses and into our lives as well. Yeah,
it's like there's so much that goes into it behind the scenes for us, like the reading, the research, then it's the connecting the dots, because everyone can read the documents, but then you've got to connect the dots. Then you've got to make sure it's not too conspiratorial that people turn off. Because this is all speculation, right? The whole thing that we're doing here is we have confirmation that lots of things are happening, but until it happens, we're speculating on the outcomes of things. One of the things that we speculate on, whether it's possible or not, is their backing of assets. And you made a video yesterday, a brilliant short. I'm sure it's going to get a ton of engagement because it was just you spouting out the information from your mind and how it doesn't make sense in some ways. Can you explain more of your thoughts about specifically gold backing a crypto asset, namely XRP?
Yeah, I mean, really, the conversation is about what backs a currency, what backs an asset. So I made the comparison, and I think this kind of puts it very simply for everyone to understand. Does the U.S. dollar, is the United States military pegged to the U.S. dollar? No. Is the U.S. dollar, I had that flipped. Is the U.S. dollar backed by the United States military? No, technically not, right? But for all intents and purposes, abso-freaking-lutely. Right, as we've engaged in our operations. Unfortunately, as an American, it's sad to see how our military has been used, but I'll just leave my comments at that. But absolutely, our military does back the US dollar for all intents and purposes. So when we look at a digital asset like XRP that has tokens on it, they used to be called issued assets. The question then becomes, if someone issues a gold-backed token on the XRP ledger, does that back the XRP ledger, and does that back or add to or decrease the price of XRP? For all intents and purposes, I am, suggesting that the value that's getting put on the ledger by other tokens is going to add to the value of the XRP ledger and eventually the XRP price, right? Do you have a direct peg 1-to-1? No, right? And you don't have that with the dollar either, right? $1 US does not get you any share of the United States military. Just same situation right here, right? But what we see is the third-party issuance of these tokens makes it so that we have to really do our research on these XRP ledger projects. Not all of them are winners. Not all of them are legit. People are putting, crap on the XRP ledger just like they're putting on any other open permissionless blockchain. But I've been making the case here that even if somebody puts an NFT, a picture of a pudgy penguin that, to me has no value, in a sense, it is adding value to the XRP ledger and it will affect XRP price because that's someone using the network burning XRP when they go to transact it. And so, I mean, really, it's a technical nuance to say that gold is not going to back XRP, because XRP is going to be backed by all of the value that is put on this ledger and settled on this ledger. That's going to be gold, it's going to be silver, and I believe that you're going to see almost every commodity tokenized and put on the XRP ledger, along with real estate. I think that we're ready to handle some derivatives. We're ready to, obviously, they're moving fast forward ahead with cross-border payments is what, the public test that's being seen by everyone, right? But I believe that you're going to see tokenized stocks, bonds, commodities, everything on the XRP ledger and others. And I want to reiterate, many people know where I stand as, very big fan of XRP. Other ledgers are going to get pieces of this action as well.
Right. Yeah. And I think this is where my brain is. The whole idea of tokenizing assets and having assets basically held on a ledger. We know XRP's got some tokenized gold, regardless of how it's nuanced in there, held in another token or whatever, but it's on the ledger. But then you've also got Algorand that have done the same. Yeah. So it's, for me, it's kind of getting my head around how the price is affected by gold, for example, being tokenized on another blockchain, because at that point, if it's tokenized on that other blockchain, the other blockchain benefits from the value being held, but XRP, being the rails for payments, would benefit from the transfer of or settlement of the value. And so I don't even know if this is an assumption, because I typically just think as I'm speaking, when you've got tokens held on the ledger, the XRP ledger, that's beneficial for potential astronomical price movement, because you need it tokenized in value on the ledger that you're operating within. So I kind of think, if obviously all the money isn't going to be held, all the value of the world isn't going to be held on the XRP ledger. It's going to be among those other tokens in that group, that ISO group that everyone talks about, including me. But it must be directly on the XRP ledger in order to create that, because Molly said it in a previous video, the astronomical price movement for XRP will be because of the value held on the network, rather than the payments that would go through XRP in ODL. And so the assets held on other ledgers would essentially go through the payment side of Ripple's technology, and the assets held would be the ones contributing to higher price points. Is that an appropriate thought to have?
Ripple is using the XRP ledger in a major way. They are the only ones that have created a liquidity pool for institutions to settle on the XRP ledger, and that's on-demand liquidity. There's a bunch of other people that are building on the XRP ledger too, and there's going to continue to be a bunch of people putting tokens that represent something, some story. And I make fun because I don't kind of do the dance and I'm here to be friends with everyone and say that your project's great. I have an obligation to my audience to cut through the BS and the nonsense and provide clarity. So when I look at a lot of the projects, they don't, I put it into simple terms, they don't turn me on. They don't get me going. They don't get me excited like these other utility assets get. But one point that I want to make, if someone is taking the step to tokenize something and put that value on the XRP ledger, I would think that they would be willing to get paid out in XRP for that asset, right? And in fact, it's really, they would either have to get paid out in XRP or get paid out in any other currency that XRP is connected with, right? That's the beautiful thing about a bridge currency in XRP is you can go from any form of value to anything else of value, right? But I would think that if someone, say a bank or say a gold mine was going to be tokenized and they're going to issue their tokens on the XRP ledger, I would assume if they're taking that step, I think it would be safe to assume or speculate that they might be okay getting paid out in XRP. So we're thinking in terms of dollars, and we always have to ask compared to what, right? So once again, if someone's putting whatever the asset, whatever the commodity is, if they're putting $1 million worth of value on the ledger right now, right? How much XRP is that? Well, XRP is at 40 cents, so we can do the simple math to get us kind of close to how much XRP that's worth. But I think that we need to start looking at XRP as the standard, as the currency. And it's a key thing that differentiates XRP from the rest of the space is the true nature of XRP being a currency. It's not just a tech. We're investing in software, we're investing in tech, but XRP being that native currency and Ripple working on their goal of making it a world reserve currency is much different than the rest of the space. And I would argue that many quote unquote cryptocurrencies have not actually created that strong of a currency. They have a token. And so once again, yeah, I think that you're right. I think that people saying that value getting tokenized on the XRP ledger isn't going to affect the XRP's value, the XRP price. I think that that's mistaken, right? Because
what is the function as to how, just to explain it? I think I understand it. If there are assets issued tokenized on the XRP ledger, how does that actually increase the price?
I believe that it's going to come from the supply demand side of somebody wanting to get liquidity for that asset.
Right.
So they need to trade in and out of that asset. Now that it's tokenized on the XRP ledger, they're going to need some XRP, or they're going to need to go to a company like Ripple that is providing a liquidity hub, a liquidity pool for an institution or for someone to transact with the XRP ledger in that sense, right? And so once again, this is going to drive demand for people, companies, institutions to actually get XRP and hold XRP on their balance sheet, because otherwise you're going to be going and having to cut Ripple a fee or pay Ripple to use the ledger versus being able to just directly tap into it yourself. Mm-hmm. And so I think that many people are underestimating how many banks and institutions and people like yourself and I, they're going to be holding XRP just so that we can access the ledger whenever we want to and however we want for whatever gets tokenized on the XRP ledger. But once again, the dollar has its reserve currency status because it's used for trade. The debt is denominated in it, mm-hmm. right? And then we have the backing of the largest military in the world. So, that bodes well for us, but we're losing that status on the world stage. XRP, I think, is an alternative. Is it the one? Is it the reserve currency, the chosen one? I think that it's very important. I think that it's very important in the new financial system, and that the banks and financial institutions that are getting ahead of the game are accumulating XRP. And I think that JP Morgan sending 15 executives to the offices of Ripple in 2017 was their way of trying to strong arm Ripple. Mm. But I think that Ripple has enough big hitters on their team that they've been able to kind of stand ground pretty strong. But the fact that we know that an institution, a consortium of banks like R3 tried to acquire 5 billion XRP, that's all the proof that I need to know that these banks and institutions are very excited to acquire a few XRP.
Yeah, I completely agree. And that was a really cool little tweet that I saw yesterday about that, the JP Morgan meeting and how it was tied into Gary Gensler. It was really cool. I love seeing stuff like that. My question is, based on your kind of view of everything, what is going to be the structure of this new financial system? What sits at the top? Because I can give context to that if it helps. So in my research recently, I've been going a lot into this asset backing of crypto assets. Going down some trains of thought, you can say, yes, there's an argument to say that digital assets, crypto assets can be backed by physical assets if they meet a certain criteria set out by the IMF, which is stability, confidence. There's a series of 4 criteria. And you can make the argument based on some other IMF documents that XRP fits the criteria when it's stable to be an asset that is backed by other assets. But then you follow different trains of thought down, different research, and that suggests that actually XRP, from a technical standpoint, from a coding standpoint, actually can't be backed, right? It's not even possible. But then if you add a little token in between to say this represents gold, for example, and XRP is backed by that, then it kind of is. It's like, what is the answer here? And so one of the trains of thought that I went down was, well, what about SDRs? Could XRP be an SDR? There's also arguments to say that yes and no, and then maybe. There's arguments for all of it. How do you see the structure of everything, considering basically one SDR has to sit over the top. And then that's usually backed by a group of SDRs in some sort of way to make it stable. How does that system all look to you in the future?
Well, think about this. The SDR right now is backed by 5 currencies. XRP is going to be backed by every currency and every commodity and every form of value on the planet. So in my opinion, it's already equivalent to an SDR, and we just put names on things. So basically, there's no code that says that the United States military backs the US dollar. So there's guys in the conversation right now that are saying, well, there's nowhere in the code, so it technically cannot be backed by these tokens, right, or the value. But for all intents and purposes, right, more value that's getting put on that ledger is going to increase the value of that ledger, of that underlying asset, that underlying native currency, XRP in this instance. And I've long compared Ripple to the IMF or the Bank of International Settlements, and in fact, I'd argue that they're kind of a little bit of both, right? They're issuing, they have control of the world reserve currency, the world reserve digital currency, XRP, through that escrow account and having such a large supply. But then they also are a settlement clearinghouse similar to the BIS. But what assets are going to be on the top? Well, here's 2 data points. Central banks are buying more gold than they have in 55 years, and the most amount of central banks are meeting with Ripple. If anybody wants to challenge that, they can show me that Algorand's had 50 plus meetings with central banks or any of these other utility cryptocurrencies that I do like. Quant's on the Digital Pound Foundation, Digital Euro, right? You know, these crypto projects are making appearances, but we have 2 facts from my research. And this is very well agreed upon and documented with gold. The pace that they're buying gold is the highest level in 55 years since the last time they reset the currency. And then they're sitting down with Ripple. And we also have already 2 central bank digital currencies built on the XRP ledger right now. So I'm running with those data points to tell me that XRP and gold are going to be at the top. XRP has more utility than gold, though.
Right. It's fascinating. I've actually completely loved going through all of this. And Matt Hamilton, who was very public about how he disagreed with the first video I made about this. I'm very thankful for that, because it showed another side of the argument that I hadn't dug into, and that's what we need. Right. But also, just as Molly says a lot, anyone can do whatever they want. They'd make the rules. So whether something is called an SDR or it just plays the role of what was an SDR, it's not called that anymore, but it does the same thing. They can do what they want.
Can I make a point real quick on that? I brought this up to Matt Hamilton in a Twitter space about Ripple calling XRP a world reserve digital currency, and he was actually unaware. Now, and I'm not knocking the guy. I have a huge amount of respect for Matt, and I appreciate Matt because he's clarifying a lot on Twitter. He's been very engaging, right? And that's good. We need those guys, the technical guys, right? But he wasn't even aware. In his defense, Ripple actually made that statement before he worked there for his brief stint at Ripple, right? They said that in 2017. And I brought that up to him in a Twitter space, and he didn't know about that at the time. And so, but to me, it just reiterates the point. Ripple called their XRP a world reserve digital currency, or said that they wanted to make XRP a world reserve digital currency. And I identify my XRP as a reserve currency on my balance sheet as well. I understand that my bags are a little bit smaller, and people are like, okay, cool story, Zach. You call it a reserve currency. Congratulations. But that's the argument that we're having right now. Is it an ESDR? Is it a reserve currency? Well, Ripple's an institution that's calling it a reserve currency, and they're treating it like one, and how they're distributing the XRP from the escrow account, and how they're returning 80% of it back to the escrow. That to me signals that they might identify their XRP as a reserve currency.
Yeah.
Right? But these guys argue that because it's not in the code, or because it's not official legal tender by the government, that it can't be the reserve, or, you know, if they can't find it on a document, or if they can't see it in the code, it's not real.
Right.
That's missing part of the story here.
Yes. And on just in their defense, that is true as of right now. But what we're talking about is where this is all going. And they are very different mind spaces. And we have to acknowledge that if we're looking in the future for what's going to happen, there may be entities that exist then that don't exist now. There may be changes to entities that exist now that will adapt for the future. My question would be, because I've had this predicament in the research, can XRP be both? Can it be a world reserve currency? And can it facilitate the payments at the same time?
Yeah, so this is another distinction that I was going to make earlier. I'm glad that you brought this up, is the fact that Ripple is the only has created the only liquidity pool for institutions to really use and settle up with XRP, right? The liquidity pools are going to be created after we get this XLS 30D update with the automated market makers. Me and you could create a liquidity pool. United States to Great Britain, a little liquidity pool. We're going to put some XRP up in there. But right now, the most recent numbers that I got from Neil Hartner, who's a senior software developer at Ripple working on ODL, is that they're settling about $250 million US per week on ODL.
Yeah.
Right. But you're going to see other liquidity pools also get created with XRP, and it's going to be easier once we get this XLS 30D update, right? And so right now, we are seeing XRP function as a reserve currency and also providing liquidity for cross-border payments, for treasury flows. There's many institutions that are getting their hands on XRP, right? And you're going to see more liquidity pools created with XRP. That's the beautiful thing about this being an open source permissionless project, is that we got all the way from memes and NFTs all the way up to some of the biggest contracts in the world are ready to be put on the XRP ledger. I mean, we saw Michael Arrington settle up for his Arrington XRP fund or whatever it is, $50 million, and he sent the transaction and paid 30 seconds when he raised $50 million for his fund. Yeah. So that's just another 50 million in US dollar equivalent value that's getting moved onto the XRP ledger.
Yeah.
So you just continue that process and you get bigger and bigger banks and institutions, and then you finally flip the switch in the United States after the SEC lawsuit ends.
Yeah. Yeah, it's coming. It's coming. I think right now we are stuck in the mode of trying to define things. And this has been a problem for me thinking about the SDR argument, because if we maintain the definition of an SDR and XRP has to fit into that, the problem that we run into is that an SDR can't be held by any individuals, right? So how do you actually make a token that does all these types of things for all types of groups of people, institutions, whatever? You can't make that currency an SDR. However, if it is hypothetically possible to reassign the escrow XRP, I don't know if you know where I'm going with this, but you basically take half the supply that's in escrow, vaguely. You say all of this XRP that's in escrow, this is SDR, and everything else is used for payments, or something like that. What that would allow is for a clean cut, that there's no confusion about, oh, well, I've got 0.25 XRP in my wallet. You can't make it an SDR because they're not focused on that side of things. So two-pronged question, is that a reasonable thought? And two, if it is it actually possible to tag certain XRP tokens to be almost treated differently?
Well, they could back the SDR by XRP, or XRP could be added to the basket of SDR, right? Because right now it's the US dollar, it's the British pound, Japanese yen. They've added the Chinese, yuan,
yep.
And then I forget what the other currency is, right? But we have 5 currencies that make up that basket. XRP could be added to that basket by them putting 10 billion, 20 billion XRP on their balance sheet. They wouldn't be changing XRP because, like what you talked about, the way you described your example, you'd be creating a different token essentially.
Yeah.
And that would be possible, right? Or you back your new token by XRP, or you just add XRP to the basket. But once again, Lewis, this is why we are talking with lawyers right now about protecting our assets. And this whole drama around the buyback committee has gotten blown way out of proportion. The facts have been misconstrued and misrepresented. and people are missing the whole point here.
Yep.
Is we don't know what their plans are with XRP, right? And we've seen some pretty interesting things that lead us to believe that they're interested, right? Some institutions like R3 tried to get 5 billion, and that's just R3. So this is why we're having conversations with the lawyers to understand how we can protect our assets here, especially in the United States, where we have a precedent of them outlining us owning gold and doing a buyback and doing a set price. So when people say that, you know, we're just crazy for having conversations about protecting our assets, I think that's so immature, and it's really unfortunate because it misses the point on why we're having this conversation. Now, is it a stretch? Is it speculation? Is it crazy? Well, you know, they can label it whatever they want. I ask, what's the alternative? What's the alternative, right? How does the US dollar maintain the reserve currency status? How does a BRICS nation, you know, put in a competing reserve currency? They're going to have to back it by something. Together, they have a pretty large military, the BRICS nations. And you're seeing it's BRICS plus, because many countries are now tired of the United States as well. We don't, for all intents and purposes, there is way more countries part of the BRICS alliance. Mm-hmm. How do they put out a competing reserve currency? Well, they're going to have a military to back theirs too. It's not as big as ours, but they can back theirs by, you know, commodities, by gold, right? They're going to have to do something to compete. And I was having this debate the other day in my Twitter space, and I acknowledge that many central banks don't want to go back to a gold standard. Many central banks don't want to go back to anything that's going to limit their capabilities as such. But how do you compete on the world stage? You have to have something in your back pocket, right? You have to have something in your vaults. And you're seeing the rest of the world is being forced to move and accelerate towards that new financial system and getting away from the US dollar, getting away from the SWIFT system. And so people call us crazy and say this and that. Well, I just ask, what's the alternative? Because I don't think that, I don't see any other cryptocurrency that's even in that realm of conversation.
Yeah, no,
nowhere near.
Nowhere near the level of depth of exploration of these ideas either. It's like you realize how niche and how detailed our knowledge is. Even people who are just in this space just casually, the amount more that they know than the majority of people is actually incredible. I've had lengthy conversations with high up bankers, mm-hmm. and I'm having a conversation at their level, if not higher, about the banking system. And it's just you realize in those situations how far this whole community within XRP has come. Because as a result of the technology that we are so interested in, we've learned about so much. We've almost taken the veil off the inner workings of everything. And I think those who take part in wealth transfers are the people who have been able to do that. And I think it's very unique in this, specifically this token, and you can make the argument for either ISOs, but specifically XRP, where we've uncovered the veil and we're seeing what's going on. But just to follow on from your you mentioning that there's so many outcomes that we're exploring that I'm forgetting where I'm going with that. I had it the whole time.
Well, can I just make a point off what you're saying there? What we see is two situations with both gold, silver, and XRP. And I'll let the audience decide whether or not this is just a coincidence or maybe these are some of the reserve assets that are going to make up a key part of the new financial system. But I'll let them finish the speculation. But there's 2 points that we have here. A record amount of derivatives used to suppress both gold, silver, and XRP. And supply demand, not a supply deficit, I should say, right? Where we're seeing gold, right, run a deficit, along with silver ran a 200 million ounce deficit last year, 2022. Now we're also seeing something interesting happening with the XRP supply, where Ripple's returning 80% of it back to the escrow, and they're only giving up a little chunk, and they're giving it only to their on-demand liquidity partners. So there's supply strengths within XRP as well, and we've seen that from the exchanges delisting it. So I don't know if it's just a coincidence, but I see the same thing. Derivatives being used to suppress price and supply shock incoming, a supply setup already being experienced within silver, 200 million ounce shortage. India was one country that actually imported 400 million ounces last year alone.
Yeah.
One final point.
Yeah.
Ripple was able to sell off $9 billion worth of XRP to their on-demand liquidity partners in 2022. Okay.
Wow.
So that's a 9 times year-over-year growth in on-demand liquidity demand and the amount of XRP that they're selling out to those institutions.
Yeah. I was surprised. I heard Cindy Young, who's a managing director at Ripple. I think she's in London. She was explaining how many transactions they've actually done lifetime in ODL, like how much they've settled. And I was actually, I can't remember the actual number, but I was so shocked at how low the number was. And at that point, immediately, I was like, that is why the price hasn't moved. It's nowhere near full capacity, like not even close, like 0.001% of what they can do, they're doing right now. And so everyone has that question: why isn't the price gone up? If people are using ODL, look, they're not using ODL the way it's going to be used when this all comes about. But I thought that was actually quite motivating for me. And yes, manipulation. I think suppression of price that exists. As an example, the other day of a group of people getting together to buy lots of XRP on Twitter. They all buy, and the price goes down. So let's explain that. There's manipulation going on. The same has happened for gold, silver, Bitcoin. There's a bigger story. There's a bigger narrative at play that's going on here. We're just trying to uncover it all, and it's very, very complex.
Well, and it's interesting to note that RippleNet, like you said, when I saw that I thought the same thing. I said, well, this explains everything. Why we haven't moved is they said that RippleNet, which ODL is only part of RippleNet, right? But they said that RippleNet has only done about 30 billion in settlement total. And so I thought, wow, that's just a drop in the bucket. That's nothing, because that's since like 2019 when they first launched RippleNet. So basically in about 3 years or so, we've only settled 30 billion total. Not all of that was on XRP either. Most of it, probably wasn't. But we did get from the Q4 market report, 60% of RippleNet transactions are now on ODL as of last year, 2022. 60% of those transactions last year on RippleNet were ODL XRP. So that's huge, right? That's starting to ramp it up, like I said. But I found this in my research very interesting, Lewis. It's an interesting coincidence and race that we see for the digital reserve currency status, because RippleNet's done about 30 billion in settlement. And from 2020 on, the digital yuan has done about, estimates put it between 14 to 20 billion in settlement so far. So you got a really a race going right here between the digital reserve currencies, the digital yuan versus RippleNet, and an extension ODL XRP.
Okay. Yeah. There's always seems to be a race between countries, and that's usually the motivating factor for them.
What would you rather hold, though? Who do you trust more? And that's a rhetorical question, right? But to the audience, you want that as your reserve currency on your balance sheet, or do you want XRP, a neutral bridge currency?
Yeah. So
with the fixed supply.
Correct. Yeah. Which is a big part of it. So if XRP doesn't sit at the top and it actually sits in the basket, what goes at the top?
Well, I think that, like I said, I think that gold and XRP are up there because they're both the two neutral assets, right? When you hold gold, you have no counterparty risk, no third-party risk. When you hold XRP, you have no counterparty risk, at least off an exchange, right? XRP is the bridge in between all of them, and I think that gold plays a role more just as a reserve. It's not liquid enough, really. Mm-hmm. It doesn't compare to XRP in that way. But there's a reason, there must be a reason why they're accumulating so much gold, right? And so, like I said, I think for me, it's gold and XRP at the very top, but XRP is going to be that bridge between all of the CBDCs and whatever is below it, and even between gold too.
It's hard to visualize such a system when the system to date has been one thing at the top, filtering down into others. but this is a new system. That's why I'm struggling to think about it as XRP and gold at the top, kind of almost balancing each other out for the rest of the system. I don't know. It's tough. This whole thing is speculation.
I would put XRP on top. I really would. If we're gonna draw a structure and lay it out like that, I would put XRP on top just because the utility's larger than that of gold's. Right, gold's market cap is about it's over 10 trillion, right, which is pretty massive. It's bigger than crypto, but I think that XRP is ready to handle trillions of dollars of settlement daily. I really think that that's where we go to is if we just get portions of cross-border payments, if we just get portions of some derivatives and bonds and stocks and every other form of value that's going to be put on the ledger, we move to a pretty fun place. And I think doing 30 billion so far in settlement over the last 3 years is just a drop in the bucket. We're just we haven't even started really.
It's such a drop in the bucket. $1 trillion every day, just shy of $1 trillion every day, is moved by Bank of England. So you're talking about like
is a Ripple
hours
partner
of
since
transactions. Yeah, a few hours of transactions at the Bank of England is the lifetime amount done on ODL.
Yeah.
Just context, everyone. I kind of think the simplest thing is going to happen. The whole Occam's razor thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
There are some very convoluted ways to make this all work. Shuffling around of this organization, changing this one, moving this currency up here. I kind of just feel like the simplest way to do it is you have XRP at the top. That filters down into commodity-backed CBDCs, which act as the SDRs, the basket of SDRs, but those are stabilized themselves by 20 commodities or a basket of commodities. And that seems like the simplest structure to have. It's very symmetrical. It's like pleasing. It makes sense. Everything stabilizes each other, and allows XRP to be the web that kind of connects it all as well. It's just my thoughts.
I think so. This is my $1 trillion business idea that anybody else can take advantage of right now. I'll just throw this out here because people are already working on it. I'm just making fun of it, but the supply chains and the logistics getting tracked is going to be how you actually verify this. And I would take it even one step further. I mean, you could even, GPS track it too. I mean, you could put a chip in your gold bar that's going to track the location, right? That's going to be put on blockchain DLT that tracks its movements, where it's at, so that you can not only verify, that it exists, but where it's at too. Yep. Like you could actually see that it's at the vault, right? Or it could be tracked as, like for instance, we're going to tokenize a gold mine. As it comes out of the ground, as it goes through that process, we'll be able to track that more efficiently. And I was just actually in Vancouver for the Vancouver Resource Investment Conference, talking with the gold and the silver bugs and the guys that are in commodities and natural resources. And that's kind of the main thing that they're missing. And I think that, to your point, I think there's going to be a race to see who can back their currency by the most solid form of value. Yeah. And I think that by supply chain logistics, whether people are going to use VET for that, or if they can just use QR codes without having to use a blockchain, I don't know, right? It's not really a use case that I've invested in, but I think that going to these companies and going to the gold guys when they go to do a new mining project and saying, hey, this is how you could use the XRP ledger, for instance, in tokenizing your gold mine and tracking the supply as it comes out, and it'll all be verified in real time, and it's going to make your guys' asset class way more liquid than it previously was as well. Yeah.
Zach, I completely agree with that whole last thing that you said there. Thank you very, very much for being on the podcast. We will have you on again. I've enjoyed this thoroughly. It was a long time coming. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lewis. Appreciate it.
Thank you.